Because money is so easy to squander and so hard to earn or come by, wish it grows in trees. The default policy in savings or growing it is to be tight and safe, whether the inflation outlook is good or otherwise. Our Sujin Kim tells us more on the Monetary Board's money policy stance now and moving forward.
The Monetary Board is continuing to take a more prudent approach in the policy stance given the substantial risk to the upside. The board deems it appropriate to maintain policy settings sufficiently tight. This even though the inflation outlook itself remains tilted to the upside, or even when there is improvement in inflation. The BSP is confident of a modest growth in 2024. The impact of policy adjustment will be reflected in the rate of growth of the economy, with the BSP eyeing some moderation in the level of economic activity. The decision to have a more hawkish position was made while taking the broadly unchanged inflation outlook into consideration. The 3.2 inflation projection last November was sustained until February of this year.
Our inflation forecasts are slightly lower for 2024, and this is in recognition of the risk partially diminishing, especially for this year.
Meanwhile, risk-adjusted inflation forecast for 2024 eased to 3.9% from 4.4% in November. The forecasts are concentrated or are solidifying on the 3 to 4% range. There is less uncertainty seen by surveying economists. The risks to inflation outlook continue to lean toward the upside, but inflation expectations are mostly steady and anchored to target. Meanwhile, domestic economic activity is seen to remain intact over the medium term. Fourth quarter gross domestic product or GDP numbers are within expectations. Domestic recovery is also likely to continue in the next few quarters. The upside risks to inflation are largely due to increased electricity rates, higher transport charges, higher oil and domestic food prices, as well as the additional impact on food prices due to El Nino.
There are still risks that, we see that could happen and further push inflation out of the target range. So I think if we see some improvement, then there could be some consideration. So basically, we look at the domestic developments, barring any further shocks that could affect inflation trend in the future.
Although government interventions to mitigate the impact of the El Nino is the primary downside risk to the outlook, the BSP emphasizes that the effort to increase productivity in the rice sector, including the distribution of drought-resistant seeds, the salience of rice prices, the recent agreement with Vietnam to secure rice supply over the next 5 years, are steps in the right direction. Economic Research Director Dennis Lapid also eyes better weather conditions in July.
The additional impact of possible further declines in crop production, particularly for rice and corn due to the strong El Nino conditions. Strong El Nino episode will be mostly confined to the first quarter of this year. And we're likely to see ENSO neutral weather conditions by the middle of this year.
Moreover, monetary and economic sector in charge, Iluminada Sikat, says the recession in Japan and the proposed increase in private sector wages will only pose a threat if they turn out to be higher than what the board had anticipated. Meanwhile, the BSP continues to support the national government's non-monetary measures to address supply-side pressures on prices and sustain the disinflation process. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas remains ready to adjust its monetary policy settings as necessary to safeguard price stability. Moreover, the monetary policy report will be available on the BSP's website tomorrow. Sujin Kim from the National TV Network for the New and Better Republic.